Sunday morning, 5 July 1942. Dear Kitty, our examination results were announced in the Jewish theater last Friday. I couldn't have hoped for better. My report is not at all bad. I had one fixed status, a 5 for algebra, two sixes, and the rest were all sevens or eights. They were certainly pleased at home, although over the question of marks my parents are quite different than most. They don't care a bit whether my reports are good or bad as long as I'm well and happy and not too cheeky, then the rest will come by itself. I am just the opposite. I don't want to be a bad pupil. I should really have stayed in the seventh form in the Montessori school, but was accepted for the Jewish secondary. When all the Jewish children had to go to Jewish schools, the headmaster took lies and me conditionally after a bit of persuasion. He relied on us to do our best, and I don't want to let him down. My sister Margaret has her report too, brilliant as usual. She would move up with cum laude if that existed at school. She is so brainy. Daddy has been at home a lot lately, as there is nothing for him to do at business. It must be rotten to feel so superfluous. Mr. Kufius has taken over Travis and Mr. Krayler the firm colon S Corporation. When we walked across a little square together a few days ago, Daddy began to talk of us going into hiding. I asked him why on earth he was beginning to talk of that already. Yes, Annie, he said. You know that we have been taking food, clothes, furniture to other people for more than a year now. We don't want our belongings to be seized by the Germans, but we certainly don't want to fall into their clutches ourselves. So we shall disappear of our own accord and not wait until they come and fetch us. But, Daddy, when would it be? He spoke so seriously that I grew very anxious. Don't you worry about it. We shall arrange everything. Make the most of your carefree young life while you can. That was all. Oh, may the fulfillment of those somber words remain far distant yet. Yours, Annie. Wednesday, 8 July 1942. Dear Kitty, years seem to have passed between Sunday and now. So much has happened, it is just as if the whole world had turned upside down. But I am still alive, Kitty, and that is the main thing. Daddy says, yes, I am still alive indeed, but don't ask where or how. You wouldn't understand a word, so I will begin by telling you what happened on Sunday afternoon. At 3 o'clock, Harry had just gone but was coming back later. Someone rang the front doorbell. I was lying lazily reading a book on the veranda in the sunshine, so I didn't hear it. A bit later, Margaret appeared at the kitchen door looking very excited. The SS have set up a call up notice for Daddy, she whispered. Mummy has gone to see Mr. Van Dan already. Van Dan is the friend who works with Daddy in the business. It was a great shock to me, a call up. Everyone knows what that means. I picture concentration camps and lonely cells. Should we allow him to be doomed to this? Of course he won't go, declared Margaret, while we waited together. Mummy has gone to the Von Dans to discuss whether we should move into our hiding place tomorrow. The Von Dans are going with us, so we shall be seven in all. Silence. We couldn't talk anymore, thinking about Daddy, who, little knowing what was going on, was visiting some old people in the Jude's Invalid, waiting for Mummy. The heat and suspense all made us very overawed and silent. Suddenly the bell rang again. That is Harry, I said. Don't open the door. Margot held me back. But it was not necessary, as we heard Mummy and Mr. Van Dan downstairs talking to Harry. Then they came in and closed the door behind them. Each time the bell went, Margot or I had to creep softly down to see if it was Daddy not opening the door to anyone else. Margot and I were sent out of the room. Von Dan wanted to talk to Mummy alone. When we were alone together in our bedroom, Margot told me that the call-up was not for Daddy but for her. I was more frightened than ever and began to cry. Margot is 16. Would they really take girls of that age away alone? But thank goodness she won't go. Mummy said so herself. That must be what Daddy meant when he talked about us going into hiding. Into hiding. Where would we go? In a town or the country? In a house or a cottage? When? How? Where? These were questions I was not allowed to ask, but I couldn't get them out of my mind. Margot and I began to pack some of our most vital belongings into a school satchel. The first thing I put in was this diary, then hair curlers, handkerchief, school books, a comb, old letters. I put in the craziest things was with the idea that we were going into hiding. But I'm not sorry. Memories mean more to me than dresses. At 5 o'clock, Daddy finally arrived, and we phoned Mr. Kufius to ask if he would come around in the evening. Van Dant went and fetched Miep. Miep has been in the business with Daddy since 1933 and has become a close friend, likewise her brand new husband Hank. Miep came and took some shoes, dresses, coats, underwear, and stockings away in her bag, promising to return in the evening. Then silence fell on the house. Not one of us felt like eating anything. It was still hot, and everything was very strange. We let our large upstairs room to a certain Mr. Goudsmith, a divorced man in his 30s, who appeared to have nothing to do on this particular evening. We simply could not get rid of him without being rude. He hung about until 10 o'clock. At 11 o'clock, Miep and Hank Van Sainton arrived. Once again, shoes, stockings, books, and underclothes disappeared into Miep's bag and Hank's deep pockets, and at 11:30 they too disappeared. I was dog tired, and although I knew that it would be my last night in my own bed, I fell asleep immediately and didn't wake up until Mommy called me at 5:30 in the next morning. Luckily, it was not so hot as Sunday. Warm rain fell steadily all day. We put on heaps of clothes as if we were going to the North Pole, the sole reason being to take clothes with us. No Jew in our situation would have dreamed of going out with a suitcase full of clothing. I had on two vests, three pair of pants, a dress on top of that, a skirt, jacket, summer coat, two pairs of stockings, Lucas shoes, woolly cap, scarf, and still more. I was nearly stifled before we started, but no one inquired about that. Margaret filled her satchel with school books, fetched her bicycle, and rode off behind me up into the unknown as far as I was concerned. You see, I still didn't know where our secret hiding place was to be. At 7:30 the door closed behind us. Mooch, my little cat, was the only creature to whom I said farewell. She would have a good home with the neighbors. This was all written in a letter addressed to Mr. Goodsmith. There was 1 pound of meat in the kitchen for the cat, breakfast things lying on the table, stripped beds, all giving the impression that we had left helter skelter. But we didn't care about impressions. We only wanted to get away, only escape and arrive safely, nothing else. Continue tomorrow. Yours, Annie. Thursday, 9 July 1942. Dear Kitty, so we walked in the pouring rain, Daddy, Mummy, and I, each with a school satchel and shopping bag filled to the brim with all kinds of things thrown together anyhow. We got sympathetic looks from people on their way to work. You could see by their faces how sorry they were they couldn't offer us a lift. The gaudy yellow star spoke for itself. Only when we were on the road did Mummy and Daddy begin to tell me bits and pieces about the plan. For months, as many of our goods and chattels and necessities of life as possible had been sent away, and they were sufficiently ready for us to have gone into hiding of our own accord on July 16th. The plan had to be speeded up 10 days because of the call up, so our quarters would not be so well organized, but we had to make the best of it. The hiding place itself would be in the building where Daddy has his office. It will be hard for outsiders to understand, but I shall explain that later on. Daddy didn't have many people working for him. Mr. Krayler, Kufius, Miep, and Ali Wasson, a 23-year-old typist who all knew of our arrival. Mr. Wasson, Alice's father, and two boys worked in the warehouse. They had not been told. I will describe the building. There is a large warehouse on the ground floor which is used as a store. The front door to the house is next to the warehouse door, and inside the front door is a second doorway which leads to a staircase. There is another door at the top of the stairs with a frosted glass window in it which has office written in black letters across it. That is the large main office, very bright, very light, and very full. Ali, Miep, and Mr. Kufius work there in the daytime. A small dark room containing the safe, a wardrobe, and a large cupboard leads to a small, somewhat dark second office. Mr. Grayler and Mr. Von Dahn, rescued two, sit here. Now it is only Mr. Grayler. One can reach Grayler's office from the passage, but only via a glass door which can be opened from the inside, but not easily from the outside. From Grayler's office, a long passage goes past the coal store, up four steps, and leads to the showroom of the whole building. The private office, dark, dignified furniture, linoleum, and carpets on the floor, radio, smart lamp, everything first class. Next door, there is a roomy kitchen with a hot water faucet and a gas stove. Next door, the washroom, that is the first floor. A wooden staircase leads from the downstairs passage to the next floor. There is a small landing at the top. There is a door at each end of the landing, the left one leading to a storeroom at the front of the house and to the attics. One of those really steep Dutch staircases runs from the side to the other door opening onto the street. The right hand door leads to our secret annex. No one would ever guess that there would be so many rooms hidden behind the plain grey door. There is a little step in front of the door, and then you are inside. There is a steep staircase immediately opposite the entrance. On the left, a tiny passage brings you into a room which was to become the Frank family's bed sitting room. Next door, a smaller room, study, and bedroom for the two young ladies of the family. On the right, a little room without windows containing the wash basin and a small WC compartment with another door leading to Margot's and my room. If you go up the next flight of stairs and open the door, you are simply amazed that there could be such a big light room in such an old house by the canal. There is a gas stove in this room thanks to the fact that it was used as a laboratory and a sink. This is now the kitchen for the Von Dan couple, besides being general living room, dining room, and scullery. A tiny little corridor room will become Peter Van Dan's apartment. Then, just as on the lower landing, there is a large attic. So, there you are. I've introduced you to the whole of our beautiful secret annex. Yours, Annie. Friday, 10 July 1942. Dear Kitty, I expect that I have thoroughly bored you with my long winded descriptions of our dwelling, but still I think you should know where we have landed. But to continue my story, you see, I've not finished yet. When we arrived at the Prince Sangrash, Miep took us quickly upstairs and into the secret annex. She closed the door behind us and we were alone. Margot was already waiting for us, having come much faster on her bicycle. Our living room and all the other rooms were chock full of rubbish, indescribably so. All the cardboard boxes which had been sent to the office in the previous months lay piled on the floor, and the beds, the little room was filled to the ceiling with bedclothes. We had to start clearing up immediately if we wished to sleep in decent beds that night. Mummy and Margaret were not in a fit state to take part. They were tired and lay down on their beds. They were miserable, and lots more besides. But the two clearer up of the family, Daddy and myself, wanted to start at once. The whole day long we unpacked boxes, filled cupboards, hammered and tidied until we were dead beat. We sank into clean beds that night. We hadn't had a bit of anything warm the whole day, but we didn't care. Mummy and Margaret were too tired and keyed up to eat, and Daddy and I were too busy. On Tuesday morning, we went on where we left off the day before. Ellie and Mayeb collected our rations for us. Daddy improved the poor blackout. We scrubbed the kitchen floor and were on the go the whole day long again. I hardly had time to think about the great change in my life until Wednesday. Then I had a chance for the first time since our arrival to tell you all about it and at the same time to realize myself what had actually happened to me and what was still going to happen. Yours, Annie. Saturday, 11 July 1942. Dear Kitty, Daddy, Mummy, and Margot can't get used to the sound of the Western Toron clock yet, which tells us the time every quarter of an hour. I can. I loved it from the start, and especially in the night, it's like a faithful friend. I expect you will be interested to hear what it feels like to disappear. Well, all I can say is that I don't know myself yet. I don't think I shall ever feel really at home in this house. But that does not mean that I loathe it here. It is more like being on vacation in a very peculiar boarding house. Rather a mad idea, perhaps. But there is how it strikes me. The secret annex is an ideal hiding place. Although it leans to one side and is damp, you'll never find such a comfortable hiding place anywhere in Amsterdam. No, perhaps not even in the whole of Holland. Our little room looked very bare at first, with nothing on the walls. But thanks to Daddy, who had brought me my film star collection and picture postcards on beforehand, and with the aid of paste pot and brush, I have transformed the walls into one gigantic picture. This makes it look much more cheerful, and when the Von Dans come, we'll get some wood from the attic and make a few little cupboards for the walls and other odds and ends to make it look more lively. Margot and Mummy are a little bit better now. Mummy felt well enough to cook some soup for the first time yesterday, but then forgot all about it when she was downstairs talking, so the peas were burnt to a cinder and refused to leave the pan. Mr. Cofius has brought me a book called Young People's Annual. The four of us went to the private office yesterday evening and turned on the radio. I was so terribly frightened that someone might hear it that I simply begged Daddy to come upstairs with me. Mummy understood how I felt and came too. We are very nervous in other ways too, that the neighbors might hear us or see something going on. We made curtains straight away on the first day. Really, one can hardly call them curtains. They are just light, loose strips of material, all different shapes, quality, and pattern, which Daddy and I sewed together in a most unprofessional way. These works of art are fixed in position with drawing pins, not to come down until we emerge from here. There are some large business premises on the right of us, and on the left, a furniture workshop. There is no one there after working hours, but even so, sounds could travel through the walls. We have forbidden Margot to cough at night, and although she has a bad cold, and make her swallow large doses of codeine. I am looking for Tuesday when the Van Dans arrive. It will be much more fun and not so quiet. It is the silence that frightens me so in the evenings, and at night I wish like anything that one of our protectors could sleep here at night. I can't tell you how oppressive it is never to be able to go outdoors. Also, I'm very afraid that we shall be discovered and be shot. That is not exactly a pleasant prospect. We have to whisper and tread lightly during the day, otherwise, the people in the warehouse might hear us. Someone is calling me. Yours, Annie.